Data Visualizing Jurong was really an initiative working together to think about the ways in which artists could operate outside of the usual museum spaces.
It's called Art in the Commons because it is a project that Sam embarked to engage the community and our constituents through contemporary art. The project was birthed in 2020 but only actualized in 2021. Yeah, and we thought of Jurong first.
The Science Centre is like one of the iconic places of Jurong, right? The first thing when you think of Jurong.
It's about the reason why we're doing all these different community projects is because we wanted to engage with audiences at a different level, being able to work within the premise of Science Centre, which is a museum of sorts, but it's not art museum, where they don't feel so intimidated as some of them would be when they come to a museum.
What is your relationship with Jurong?
I used to live in Jurong when I was young.
Going to the Chinese garden.
Visiting things like the Science Centre.
What was the best meal you remember having in Jurong?
At the Indian restaurant at Science Centre.
The naan there was really fantastic.
That's hidden in the kids' play area.
1-star rated 𝘊𝘰𝘮𝘗𝘓 at a train station. That's not a good answer.
I think this project is quite interesting because it's the first time that our team has actually put up an exhibition together with an artist that's out of our SAM, Singapore Art Museum boundaries.
In thinking about the artist lineup, we didn't necessarily want to work with artists who lived in Jurong, or not that there were many. We wanted artists who had different relationship with Jurong, and when we thought about maybe the first artist, we had in mind an artist who ideally would also have an educator background, the kind of educational role that Science Centre does. And so one of the first names that came up with was definitely Debbie. As an artist who oftentimes work in terms of speculative fictions, we thought it would be nice to bring her in, given that Jurong itself seems to be ongoing to a new chapter.
It was a great experience working with Sam. The staff, everybody was, the curatorial team and the production team was so resourceful. Bringing me in the project also allowed us to bring together so many people. Bringing together people from Jurong, but also the Science Centre and also, in my case, Nanyang Polytechnic students.
One thing that I really like about Debbie's work for us is its interactive component, the way that it allows kids to play with the speed of the tunneling through. And this interactivity is something quite important for not just the work, but when we first approached Debbie, as someone who works in interaction design, but then also as someone who, on the sides, have also become a recent mother. And so we thought that, her own engagement with her own child and their own interactions allow her to think about how kids, particularly in Science Centre, might react to her own work as well.
When I worked on the project, I think the COVID got worse actually. And initially we really wanted to speak to people face to face. We wanted to interview people.
Would have been like what we do almost in UX design. Where you go and speak to people and say, how do you like it? What is your opinion? Or how will you find this button? Yeah, and that would be the best way in person. But of course, in the end, it is what we did is the students design the questions, and then we send the questions out. Yeah.
So our public consultation was held online, and at the beginning, I think we thought that there would be some sort of data that we lose because of it, but actually, at the end of the day, we saw that it was just a different platform of collecting data, and at the same time, people also respond to that platform differently.
So they were able to share with us some of their most intimate memories, I would say, about Jurong, and that really surprised me, the amount of detail that came in. In particular, I can share one. Even as someone who lived in Jurong for 35 years, I almost forgot that there used to be dinosaurs within the old Jurong Entertainment Centre. What do you most enjoy about this project?
My practice in a very different kind of dimension.
Looking at everybody's memories.
Bring students to work on the project together.
What is something from the data gathered
that you never knew about Jurong?
Food places that are gone.
People miss being close to nature.
History that's very woven with local life.
Things that capture the imagination of Jurong's residents.
For Berny and Kapi's work, I think it's interesting because they took the same space, but the nature of the work was very different. And so when people enter the space, the experience and the way they interact was very different.
Kapilan is someone who works quite directly within the tech sector. So he's got someone who's a programmer So these are some kind of different aspects of the practice that we really want to bring out through the different chapters.
And I remember this one particular story about a nature lover who was used to like watch bird migrations or like, you know, like flocks of birds just coming in, and then he talked about like how he missed the sounds, the sights of like all of these like birds just taking up empty land and calling it their home. That kind of like inspired me to create sound that is a mix of both like natural diegetic sounds that you would hear in a mangrove swamp, right? Like so the movement of water or bird calls, and have that like slowly evolve over time into something that's a bit more synthesized and digital.
I think each one of us approached the idea of data visualization from a very unique standpoint and one that is very close to our individual practices. So like, I think the way like Bernie handled data visualization, especially is something that is so tangible and practical, like where you can almost like reach out and touch the data and be within the space.
And the patterns of these lanterns were translated from memories that we collected of the Chinese garden, which is still under redevelopment in Jurong. The pressure for me was the scale, because it was a scale, I mean, I chose the space, but the scale that I was working at was bigger than anything I had done before. And then I also was working with SUTD, which was very new for my practice to have that kind of collaborative element. Definitely, I felt like new challenges that I faced when accomplishing this project. But I was also well supported by Sam, so yeah, that was helpful.
Why I got interested in working on the project was really us thinking through, as people who have some relationship to Jurong, what Jurong will be in the next few years. I think for some time now, people know that Jurong has been kind of designated to be the second CBD in Singapore. So it's imagined as part of this process where Singapore decentralizes. Right? And as a resident of Jurong, I think that's quite interesting part of the project. Also me thinking about what I want Jurong to be. And then working on data visualizing Jurong and having artists come to Jurong to work on installations. It's also me hoping that people will come to this side of the island and to think of it potentially also not just as a place where you bring kids to play, but also to encounter art again.